Your coding agent needs a Codebase map. CodeGraph is a local semantic index for Claude Code, Cursor, Codex CLI, and OpenCode. Instead of making an agent rediscover the repo through grep, glob, and file reads on every task, it builds a graph of symbols, calls, files, routes, and relationships. Then the agent can ask the graph where the code lives before it starts changing things. The expensive part of a coding agent is often the part before the code change. It has to find the right files, understand which symbols call each other, and work out which tests might matter. That can take a surprising number of tool calls. CodeGraph moves that discovery step into a local index, so the agent starts with structure instead of wandering through the repository. Okay, so the basic idea is straightforward. CodeGraph parses the repo, extracts the meaningful code objects, stores them locally, and exposes that map through MCP. A coding agent can ask for a symbol, a caller, a callee, an impact radius, or a compact context bundle. That is much closer to how a senior engineer gets around a repo, by following relationships, not just matching text. The repo is already getting serious attention. As of May 19th, it is sitting around 9.3K stars and 576 forks, with an MIT license and a TypeScript codebase. The latest GitHub release is version 0.7.10, and the package file has already moved to 0.7.11. That pace matters because this kind of tool depends on tight integration with agent clients. Across 7 open-source codebases, CodeGraph reports an average of 35% lower cost, 59% fewer tokens, 49% faster exploration, and 70% fewer tool calls. Those numbers are not about model quality. They're about giving the model less housekeeping work before it can reason about the change. Under the hood, this is not a hosted service. CodeGraph uses TreeSitter to parse source files and extract nodes and edges. It stores the result in a local SQLite database with FTS5 search. Then it resolves references where it can, including calls, imports, inheritance, and framework routes. A native file watcher keeps the index current as the repo changes. The quick start is built around npx, then CodeGraph init. The benchmark section compares runs on repos like VS Code, Excalidraw, Django, Tokio, OKHTTP, Gin, and AlamoFire. Further down, the docs show the MCP tools that agents call directly, plus the CLI commands for indexing, status checks, context building, and impact analysis.
Privacy is a practical part of the design. The index lives in a local .codegraph folder, and the README does not require an API key or a hosted search service. That is useful for private repos, client work, and teams that do not want code shipped into another retrieval system just to make their coding agent less clumsy. The MCP tools are the main interface for coding agents. Search finds symbols and matching code. Context builds a focused bundle around the thing being changed. Callers and callees let the agent move through relationships without opening every nearby file. Impact analysis gives it a way to ask what might break before it edits. Setup is meant to be short. You can run the package with npx, move into a project, and initialize CodeGraph interactively. The installer can write MCP configuration and agent instructions for Claude Code, Cursor, Codex CLI, and OpenCode. It can also print config for specific targets, which helps when you want to wire it into an existing setup instead of using the interactive path. A lot of agent tools accidentally become single-client utilities. CodeGraph is broader than that. The repo includes installer targets for Claude Code, Cursor, Codex CLI, and OpenCode, with each target getting the kind of config or instruction file that client expects. That makes the project more reusable than a one-off prompt file. The project is written in TypeScript, but it is designed for mixed repos. It supports more than 19 languages and framework-aware route extraction across common web stacks. That means a backend route or handler can become part of the graph instead of hiding inside plain text search. For large apps, that distinction can save a lot of backtracking. One of the more practical commands is CodeGraph affected. Give it a change source file, and it traces import dependencies to find the tests that are most likely to matter. That is exactly the kind of question agents ask badly with raw search. They can guess from file names, but dependency direction gives them a cleaner starting point.
Compared with plain grep, CodeGraph gives the agent memory of the repository structure. Compared with embedding search, it can follow relationships that are not just semantic similarity. Compared with heavier code search platforms, it is a local developer tool that talks to the agent through MCP. That combination is the reason the repo feels timely. This kind of tool matters most once the repo is large enough that orientation becomes a tax. On a tiny project, an agent can brute force its way through the files. On a mature codebase, repeated discovery eats tokens, time, and attention. CodeGraph is basically a way to make the first few minutes of every agent run less wasteful. The latest GitHub release is worth calling out because it fixes practical integration problems. Version 0.7.10 improved the MCP handshake on slower file systems, added safer Windows CLI output, and tightened module-qualified symbol lookups. Those are small details, but they matter when the tool has to sit between a real codebase and an agent client every day. There are trade-offs. You now have an index that needs to stay fresh, a runtime requirement of Node 20 or newer, and a native SQLite path that the README clearly prefers over the WASM fallback. Parser coverage also matters. If a language or framework is weakly supported, the graph can still help, but you should expect less precise relationships. The people who should care are the ones already pushing coding agents into real work. If you are using Claude Code, Cursor, Codex CLI, or OpenCode on a large repo, CodeGraph attacks a problem you can actually feel. The model may still make judgment calls, but at least it starts from a sharper view of the codebase. Bottom line, CodeGraph is a serious attempt to make coding agents spend less time getting lost. Reasoning, tests, and code review still matter. The repo gives the agent a better map before those steps begin, and that is a practical advantage once the codebase is too large to rediscover on every task. The larger reason CodeGraph is worth watching is that coding agents are moving from single-file edits into multi-step work. At that point, repo orientation becomes infrastructure. The agent needs quick answers to where something is defined, who calls it, what route exposes it, and which tests deserve attention. CodeGraph gives those questions a local path. If this style catches on, the best agent setups will look less like a single prompt file and more like a maintained layer around the repo. For more GitHub repo deep dive videos, subscribe to Build Things with AI.